What's going on, people? Super late. Go Eagles. Beat Dallas. Why are people Dallas Cowboy fans everywhere across America? And they've been bad for a million years. And why are they in Philly and they've never been to Texas before? I don't get it. But how's everybody doing? If you're new here, which almost everyone is because I just started doing this, my name is Ryan Fagan. I am a broker owner of Artie Real Estate, uh, which is a real estate brokerage property management company. I've been a real estate agent for over 10 years. I've worked in property preservation. I've been a real estate analyst for a commercial appraisal firm. I've also been a licensed mortgage loan officer, done millions of dollars in mortgages and loans. And I tell you guys all that because the internet is a lie and you shouldn't believe anybody. But I just want to give you guys context to who I am. I'm not Caesar Pena. I'm not DJ Envy. I am not an entertainer. I am a real estate professional for over 10 years. I'm not saying I'm the best person ever in the world. I am located in New Jersey. And I just want to give people context so that you know who you're listening to. And I think I have something worthwhile to say about real estate. This is an interactive show, so if you guys have questions, I will do Q&A. We can basically do a whole consultation. If you have mortgage questions, if you have real estate questions, business. I flipped over, I think, about 6 properties, and then I have 10 rental units in my portfolio, and I'm working on an active flip right now in this market, first time in the COVID market. So if you guys have any questions about any of that kind of stuff, I am here to answer them. Today, I am going to be talking about the suburbs. So also I'm based in New Jersey, South Jersey, near Mount Holly. And actually, we're going to talk about one of the communities here in South Jersey that's very relevant with the suburbs. And it's a very unique town in which I really want to do a documentary about this. And I want to get more resources to do it well because it's a story that mainstream people don't know. And even people around here don't know about their history here. And it is such a unique story about housing, has to do with discrimination, but basically why people live where they live. And I think that'll be interesting as far as this video as well, because we're going to be talking about the suburbs, how they were developed, why they were developed. I'm always, one thing that I'm very interested in is how systems or like government policy creates people that behave a certain way, right? So zoning laws, tax law, government funding for like the FHA, VA, different types of loans and all that kind of stuff. I think that those are things that we should be paying attention to because that shapes how our society is for everybody. And, for example, we always worry about who the president is and what the president says and does. But actually, if a good example of that right now is the labor relations department in the federal government. We're seeing all these strikes and things like that because a lot of pro-union people have been appointed there, and it seems like they're getting a lot of support from the government. So it might not be the president per se. It's not the president coming out and saying certain things, but behind the scenes, based off of appointments and stuff like that, we're seeing a lot of changes, and these unions are winning. I think the UPS people, first of all, got like a huge raise, which it makes sense because shipping and packages and delivery is like super important right now, and that's why I find interesting is all these changes that we're going through. I like to observe how policy and the systems that we create around them develop the future, and I think as a business person or an entrepreneur or just even a regular person that's just working a 9 to 5, if you pay attention to the way that these systems are moving and what's happening, you could do better because you could take advantage of certain systems. Like the PPP loans, a lot of people did really well. Some people got caught scamming on them, but if you could work the system, same thing. Like, I'm not saying you should lie or anything, but unemployment, a lot of people benefited from the self-employment opening to unemployment and stuff like that. So always pay attention to systems, and I find them very interesting. Just like I always wonder, like, why does someone live where they live versus they could live anywhere in the world or in the country? Why don't they move? Why do they stay where they are? What makes people feel like they're attached to a community? How do they, how does that feel? What city versus the suburbs, rural areas versus the city or the suburbs, the South versus the North, different, the West, East Coast, Midwest, how these cultures are developed. And a lot of things are dependent on where you live, obviously, and housing. And so housing policy, while seems boring, that's why I'm late too, because I wanted to prep for this live stream and try to make it not super boring. Because I find it very interesting, and maybe very few people will. But um, why do you live where you live? Like, what's your family's history? Like, why were you born where you were born? What did your parents do? What did your great grandparents? Where did they come from? Why did they? And more importantly, which actually comes from Black Panther too. Um, I'm gonna butcher it, but Shuri was talking to Namor. Is that his name? And she was like, "How is this possible?" And he said, "The more important question is why." And I believe that. Like, why did your family move to where they moved? Like, what were the factors that influenced them? And now, when you're thinking about where you live and what you choose to do, and where to grow roots or put your family, and that's probably one of the most important decisions that anyone's going to make is where they live and the rationale behind why it is. And so for the new people coming in, talk to me nice, say hello, don't just sit there and watch me, say something. Let's have a back and forth engagement. Let's have a Q&A. If you have questions, participate, because we're going to be reacting to a bunch of videos about the suburbs. We're going to start kind of with the history. We're definitely going to touch on this very, very, very polarizing but heralded figure in pop, or not pop culture, but in housing. And it's weird. And this is the thing that I want to tackle in this documentary that I want to do is, was the guy racist? Or was it the government policy that encouraged him to do what he did as far as how he built communities and the restrictions that they put on them? I think it's a fascinating question if you're open-minded, because obviously it's easy just to throw the racist word at everybody and everything these days. I think that, again, systems are more important. So we're going to talk about this popular figure probably about halfway through. I don't know how long I'm going to be on here, but again, the Eagles won, so shout out to Eagles, because I can't stand these Dallas Cowboys fans. I didn't watch the game because I'm a nerd and I've been working, but very happy they won, so I don't have to endure the Dallas Cowboys fans talking on the internet, on Facebook, and they never even been to Texas. So anyway, back to the reaction. I love these Vox videos, and so this one's going to paint some context for us and give us a little bit of history and also be a bit interesting. But we're going to dive into everything about the suburbs. We're going to start from the beginning and come to modern times. Just keep in mind, I was born in Philadelphia. Um, my mom was actually 16 and my dad was 18 when I was born. And my mom's from Northeast Philadelphia. My dad is from North Philadelphia. And that's why I find housing and race very interesting, because it affected my life. Because my mother when she got her stuff together, decided to move, or both my parents, they decided to move out of Northeast Philadelphia because at the time, if you were black in basically the Irish Catholic neighborhood, they might beat you up. If you, especially if you were what, like a white girl, they was definitely going to beat you up, and they were going to chase you out the neighborhood. And so I was born in 1988, and so that those were the times. I mean, I was a kid, but there were kids on the block in Northeast Philly that I was not allowed, that wouldn't play with me or weren't allowed to play with me. I learned all this stuff later in life, but my parents decided to move to the suburbs in Jersey, in South Jersey, to avoid that, right? So they wanted to move to a diverse neighborhood where, walking down the street, you might not get jumped for racial reasons. And I'm super happy that they did that. But I'm telling you guys that to let you know that I have a suburban bias. I like grass. I like trees. I don't like a whole bunch of humans on top of me. But as I've been getting older, which I feel like is reverse, young people usually now gravitate towards the city. As I get older, I've been finding an appreciation for um, everyday social interaction, seeing more people, seeing the hustle bustle of the city, being able to walk somewhere, things like that. And that's really the bulk of what I'm going to get into. But we're going to start with the history and how the suburbs developed, and then we're going to paint the picture tonight on this cool, chilly Sunday night here in New Jersey, the New Jersey suburbs. And I'm going to give a lot of my opinion, and because I'm on the land development and zoning board in my community, and I always look at this stuff and I say, well, I never want to do things the way they've always been done just because they've been done. And so I'm always but trying to change stuff, you can break it. So I've been just trying to educate myself and learn and kind of marinate in new ideas as far as how can we make the suburbs better, because you guys know my number one passion is give empowering people, and the way that I can help empower people is through financial education and through real estate ownership, because I think there are tremendous financial benefits, but also a lot of intangible benefits. Because when you own in your community, you are a stakeholder in your community in a different way than if you were just renting. And, you can really influence your community and things like that living, as an owner. Obviously if you rent, you can still vote, you have all the same powers, but it's just different when you own. And there's a lot of benefits to that, and community and your home and where you live is really important. So this stuff goes deeper than just real estate, and that's the point of these lives. I always want to make them relevant to someone that doesn't particularly care about the financial aspect of real estate. I want to make it about life. I want to make these about community, and yeah, that's what we're doing. So let's react to this first Vox video. I love Vox. They do a really good job. Not super biased, some of them kind of are, but I'll give you my takes on it as we go through. So let's start with this one. It's why so many suburbs look the same. Vox video on YouTube. I like the music. All right, those houses look like they're like $1 million. So for context, not a great sample. Yeah, fountains. Okay. Okay. Honestly, somebody should do a documentary just about the FHA and how it shaped housing policy. You guys have no idea how impactful it was, and we're going to get into that with the video, though. They had that many cars in 29. Okay. Okay. All right. Whoa, 92% in housing, a 92% decrease in housing in 1929. That's the biggest crash of all time. Way more than the housing bubble of 08. 08 was like 40% or something. Might have been less than 40. So, guys, that's a big thing. The loan term, the longer the loan term is, the less the mortgage overall payment is, but the more that you pay in interest, of course. So, a 5-year mortgage at even at 50% down today would be like on the average house, which is like $400,000. I'd have to calculate it actually, but it's a lot. I'm not going to stop for that. Mm-hmm. All right. So this is my first point about systems, right? Or governments. When you create a system that is objective and then your government agency makes objective decisions about something, you're going to get a lot of human bias in your policy. And that leaves to, well, some people just don't like certain things or they don't like certain kinds of people. It opens you up to all kinds of um, strange results or negative results or biased results. I guess they could be good because you also have the freedom to make good choices. But when it comes to the government, I don't think that's good. Oh God, permits. So that's still today, right? When you buy a house on FHA, they get an appraisal, and the appraiser is going to go out there and check for all these FHA standards, and those have to be corrected before you would be able to get funded for an FHA loan to purchase that property. So big things are chip paint on houses that are built before 1978 because of lead paint. So if there's chip paint anywhere, it's going to have to be sealed and coated to the FHA standard. Sometimes they'll get you for cracked sidewalks and a whole bunch of other issues. Basically, they want to make sure the home is habitable because they are insuring the loan up to a certain amount. So they want to make sure that the house is good, that they're insuring to, and when I say insure, I'm not saying like homeowners insurance, they're insuring the bank in case you don't pay the bank back. The FHA will give bank the FHA will give the bank some of the money that they lost because you defaulted. So they want to make sure that if they foreclose and take the house, that they can recover their value. That's why they do an appraisal, and that's why they want to inspect the property. That makes total sense. It is a pain in the ass, though, sometimes. Yeah, so if you guys are ever looking at houses, actually let's bring that up. I'm not going to spell asbestos properly. Hold on, let me bring my screen up. I'm going to show you guys asbestos siding. What is a good photo? Actually, a lot of these are pretty decent. So this is like the fake asbestos that looks like asbestos, but it looks like this. It has like little grooves in it, and there are these plates. This is asbestos siding. That's an ugly one. It doesn't always look bad. Like it can look like that. So if you see this on the side of a house, generally it's not dangerous, but the thing about asbestos, you start cracking it and breaking it and stuff. The asbestos dust is dangerous, and so you need to get this removed in an environmentally and hazard-free way, and that can cost a little bit more money. You can also just side over it. I believe that is to code still. So if you ever encounter a property that has that, just keep in mind that that is asbestos. That is asbestos siding, and just pay attention to that. This is okay. I'm going to go on a tangent a little bit. This is why having a real estate agent that understands construction or understands building materials and stuff like that is important. And especially if you're looking at older houses, when you're choosing to work with a real estate agent, you probably want to work with somebody who has experience in the type of properties that you're looking to purchase. So, I mean, your cousin or the cool guy on TV or whoever's advertising might be cool, but you might want to ask a couple questions and make sure that they know areas, because we have certain areas around here that, and actually we're going to talk about the suburban community in a little bit, that has to do with this housing policy and everything. They have a lot of asbestos siding on their properties, and if you are an area expert, you will know that, and you know how to deal with it. You know the contractors to call, you know the process. If an agent's from another area and doesn't deal with that type of stuff, they're not going to be able to help you as much. So that is just something to consider. And there's a couple people on this live. There's 4 people overall, 2 on YouTube, 1 on Twitch, 1 on Facebook. Talk to me nice. Don't be weird. Say hello. It's I don't bite or nothing. And if you guys have your questions, please make sure to ask. And let's continue with the video. Oh, sorry. So this is what I kind of wanted to talk about. So this is how policy can make people do things that they otherwise maybe may or may not do, because obviously because it's policy, maybe the majority agreed with it, right? But essentially the FHA would not qualify communities to give the FHA loan, which is, everyone needed it because it was the lowest down payment, and it was government insured. So it was the best type of loan at the time for the average Americans. So when they're building all these houses after World War II, if you didn't make your community FHA approved, then you probably wouldn't sell your houses. and you would go bankrupt. So that creates an incentive for the builders to limit the community to only white people. I want to ask you guys, say you were not racist and you disagreed with it, but you were a home builder and basically you kind of need to discriminate to build that community. I'm not saying you absolutely need to, but you're going to really have a hard time in your business. Are you doing it? I mean, obviously, no one's going to say yes, so don't even answer. But just stick to yourself. Hmm. I don't know. I look. I'm just asking the questions. I find it to be an interesting question, just because if the government is encouraging you to do this, and this is the only way to build houses, and actually be able to sell them to people, puts people in a weird situation. That's why we don't want bad policy like that, by the way. It's a horrible thing. Now let's think about this a little bit, right? Say you're a developer, you just spent $5 million, which back then was a ton of money, probably not even that much, to buy a whole bunch of land, and you're going to build 5,000 houses. You have to submit your plans to the FHA, and they need to approve them. Otherwise, you're going to have a hell of a time selling those properties. So basically, you have to do whatever the FHA wants. And now, you're sending in your plans, and you need to get it approved, and you got to create it to the design that the FHA wants. Just think about that as we continue. Just think about the mindset of a developer. So you have to build your neighborhood the way that they want you to. Um, the other interesting thing is, so people after World War II, there was a baby boom, 1945 and beyond, basically the 1950s. Um, all these people were coming back from the army. They wanted to get their lives together. And the thing to do was to move to the suburbs. The idea was that if you had a car, you could live in the suburbs, drive into the city to work, and you have your own little piece of paradise outside of the city, which had crime and smelled bad and smog and all kinds of stuff like that. So everybody wanted to leave, and it became viable for the middle class. Okay. Oh, but so like the obsession with cars is interesting because I don't know. Obviously, the car culture in the 50s and 60s was really popular. I wonder if we think that was a good idea today, right? Like, do you guys like driving far to a commute? Now we have remote work, which is changing everything. But imagine you could walk to your job and it's like 5-10 minutes. It'd be healthier and more convenient. Just think about that for now. All right, sense of community. Let's talk about it in the suburbs. Do you guys feel like if you live in the suburbs, do you guys feel like there's a sense of community? Because I don't. I think everybody is antisocial, especially after COVID. Everybody sits in their own house. No one ever goes outside. You have sidewalks that go nowhere. Where are you going to walk to on a sidewalk? Around in a circle. There's no destinations. I think that's the problem. There's no walking destinations in at least like most suburbs, like that map that they showed before, that community that won best master plan award. Where are you going? Why even have a sidewalk? Where are you walking to? And I think that's a big problem. And yeah, but I don't think there's a sense of community, because when do you see your neighbors? Everyone gets in their car. Now they're still isolated. They drive to the store. They get out of their car. They don't talk to anybody. They go in the store. They buy stuff. They get in their car. They come back home. There's no chance for like human interaction versus, if there was a coffee shop in your neighborhood, you could walk to it. Or if there was a shopette, like a little shop, or a little restaurant, like a cafe or something, you could go, and then you would meet your neighbors, and more people would be outside, because there'd be more reason to be outside other than just going for a walk. And that has to do with like American obesity and stuff like that. I think we're going to cover that in another video, but walking for no reason is cool, and it's helpful for your health. But what if you could combine walking with like traveling to go somewhere where you needed to go, whether that's work or go shopping or do something recreational outside? Like, it's kind of ridiculous in the suburbs. You have to like drive to the park or drive to the location where you're going to exercise or be active. What It would be a lot more efficient if you just like jogged, or where you were in jogging or walking distance to the things that you wanted to go to. Right? That would make sense. I think that's a major problem with the suburbs. And I never thought about it in this way, but imagine in your suburban community, there was places to go. And that's okay, so that's the other thing. We have more space, but it's not being used. It's a lawn that no one's outside to see, except for when they drive by in 3 seconds. There's no so you're probably outside more if you live in the city, and active more if you live in the city, which is tight and not as conducive or not as nice to be outside, because it is nice to be outside where you got fresh air over here in the suburbs and everything, but there's nothing to do. There's nowhere to go. You have to get in a car to go there, so you can't even enjoy outside. Culture. And this is the thing that I really am pondering, is we're building these suburban communities the same way they've been built by some of the pioneers of the suburbs that we're going to talk about, the same way essentially since the 40s and 50s. And have we really analyzed, like, is this a good way to do it? Because I feel like, especially with business, if the business works this way, if we could build a development this way and sell it and make money, why the heck are we going to take any chances in doing anything else? And that's where, like, you need an innovator like Steve Jobs to come out with the iPhone and come out with a new way of doing things, to rethink things. But most corporate people, most people in their job just want to keep their job. Their metrics, they know that what the formula is, and they're going to stick to the formula until it no longer works. And that's sad. And that, because there's no personality in these neighborhoods. It doesn't foster good society, in my opinion. I think where you meet your neighbors, um, walk it somewhere to the coffee shop, something like that, would have a really good social impact, especially now because we have the internet and all this stuff. There's all this polarization. If you're a Republican, a Democrat, whatever, everyone hates each other because they don't know each other. They don't talk to each other like human beings. Like, oh yeah, there's John down the street. I think those simple interactions would really help our culture. The problem, which we're going to talk about in the next video, is that there's a lot of systems, and not just a system, basically a zoning law makes us build this way even today in the suburbs, which again is a problem. I don't know how we fix it yet, but we're going to kind of work through that. And I wonder what you guys think. Do you like the suburbs? Do you hate them? What do you think can make them better? But yeah, I think it goes beyond just dollars and cents. I think it really matters about our society, our community, the way that our developments are constructed and how we live. And that is okay. So that's the issue with zoning, is that if you try to change it, we're so suburban people are culturally stuck on the idea of how the suburbs should be, where no one lives near you, there's no one outside. People think they like that. I don't think they actually think about this lifestyle. I don't think it's good for people. You should have social interactions. You should meet other people. There is this, like, people don't want outsiders in their neighborhood. They're going to call the cops if they see somebody they don't recognize and all that kind of stuff. I think less of that would happen if we created communities in a different way. So I think that's important. Okay. That's crazy. And Philadelphia probably has easier ways to walk and get around than the suburbs, which is grass and trees and all this kind of stuff. It's easier to walk somewhere. There's more bike paths. There's more interconnectivity. Like, there's no reason that your suburban community shouldn't have bike paths that connect everything, so that if your friend lived in the other neighborhood down the street, that you could at least ride your bike and get there. There's no reason that shouldn't happen. But where's the political will? Who cares? No, this isn't like a big issue to people right now, and it's not something that people think of. And that's what Steve Jobs talked about, is pe- you people didn't even know they wanted the iPhone until they put it in their hands. And housing has a lot to do with government and policy, and it's big money. So how are you going to get people to take a risk? And show people rather than try to convince them, because you're not going to convince anybody. And bam. So look at that. Just houses. Negro subdivision. Okay. White property. Okay. See, this is an interesting thing. They had to make the streets curved because the FHA thought they looked better, which I appreciate because my issue with American architectural style is that it's all about efficiency and money. If you go to Europe, the buildings have stuff on them that just costs money and is elaborate just to look nice. And I think that's important. Is that I see it's hard to quantify the importance of architectural aesthetic, but attractive buildings and buildings that have a statement or culture about them, it does something. And there's a value to it. It's just not an economic value that you can put on a balance sheet or a cash flow statement at a home developer. And I think that's a problem because you look at these houses in the suburbs, they all look the same. They have no uniqueness, no design features. And I get that, they were created to serve a giant housing need. The funny thing is, we have a giant housing need now. And in the next video, we're going to talk about kind of the problems with that. I don't care about this cul-de-sac though. Like, who cares? Oh, that's it. All right, guys. All right, so this will give some context, and this is a guy. We'll just talk about it. This is about William Levitt after World War II. See, this is when our country could do stuff. And obviously there's a racial problem and all that kind of stuff, but they had a housing need, okay? All these war veterans are coming home, and you know what they trying to do. They having kids. Okay? They've been at war for 5 years. Oh, no, 3 years. They've been gone. So you know what they ready to do. Okay? And now they got money? Man. So they having all these kids and they need somewhere to live. So we built a lot of houses to accommodate them. And that same thing is happening today where we're having so many people who need housing and it's not getting built fast enough. And that's a government problem. And that's the next thing we're going to tackle after we give some context about this developer. That looks like California. Controversial. So this video skips over the racial component. And that's why this guy is very interesting, because you can't talk about him without the housing discrimination part. At the same time, I want to know, did he do it just for business, or how did he feel about that? And I really want to know. I know his heirs are still alive. I wonder what they would have to say about all this stuff. I wonder if they had any insight. Probably wouldn't. They'd try to make him look as good as possible, but I do wonder about that. But let's continue. William Levitt. Shout out to Alfred. They got the framers there. Bam, bam. Assembly line. That's one day. One day. Got the whole outside of the house done. 36 guys. Right down the street from me. Well, so Levittown is very close to here, and then we have another Levittown, but it's called Willingboro, New Jersey, and that's where I want to do a documentary about because, well, let's just continue this. I'll talk about Willingboro and Levittowns and Levitt. $10,000, and it's on FHA loan at 30 years, and they had a very low down payment. Veterans had zero down payment. So you got out of the Army, you had your wife, you're about to have kids, you go to Levittown, which was like, you're not a big baller, but you're doing good for yourself. You're a catch, as a guy. You go to the Levitt office, they hook it up. They got the loan people there. They got everything streamlined. You go in, you pick out your model home. Bam, they build it in a couple days. I don't know how fast the moving process was, but they were building hundreds of houses a day with that assembly line process. And bam, you live in the American dream, right? And those houses today are $300,000-$400,000, and you paid $10K in 1950. So that is like 70 years, but still, if you had generational wealth, if you passed those houses down, okay. So see, they skipped over the racial component of this. So William Levitt revolutionized home building with the assembly line process of building the houses. This was to accommodate housing after World War II. And he built in a Levittown in New York, upstate New York or something like that, where I think Bill O'Reilly's from. Shout out to Bill O'Reilly, I guess. Levittown, Pennsylvania, and in Willingboro, New Jersey, was called Levittown until he got upset with the town because they changed the name and he stopped funding the schools because he used to fund the schools. And he built some stuff in Florida and Maryland and some other places, but he was on Time magazine. Let me find it. William Levitt, Time magazine. This guy was like really respected. Okay. Yeah. See, William Levitt shows him in the suburbs. He was on Time magazine. Bam. 1950. So this guy is a really important figure in real estate, housing, and it's local history to me. I am in the Mount Holly area, which Willingboro, or the old Levittown, is about 15 minutes from here. It's adjacent to where I'm at right now. The interesting thing, and I'm going to do a whole live stream about this and really go into it. I have a ton of research because I actually did some interviews for the documentary. I was going to call it The Borough, and it was about William Levitt, housing discrimination told through the story of Willingboro, New Jersey. The unique thing is that William Levitt put in deed restrictions that only whites could buy in his communities. As we've already discussed, the FHA would not approve communities that were racially mixed. So if he didn't do that, he probably wouldn't have been able to build or sell those houses. And it leaves the question, what was he thinking and all that kind of stuff. But that's why policy is very important. The interesting thing about Willingboro, New Jersey specifically, is that a World War II veteran, I believe his name was Willie James. I think some of his family members still live in Willingboro. He was stationed, I believe, at Fort Dix, and he was part of the NAACP, I believe. Don't quote me on all this because I did the research a long time ago about this, so I could be a little off, but just rock with me here. He sued to break the deed restriction that made it so that blacks could not live in certain areas, specifically Willingboro. And he won. So Willingboro, they broke the deed restrictions, which allowed middle-class blacks to move into Willingboro. So anybody with money, one of the only options to move to the suburbs and do the whole American dream thing was to move to Willingboro, New Jersey. At the time, there were virtually no black suburbs. Black people were forced to live in the worst parts of town, in cities, and relegated, redlining, and all that kind of stuff. They weren't even allowed to buy homes outside of certain communities. And we see the legacy of that today. We see the reason the racial segregation in housing is actually just as bad as it was, I believe, in the 1950s. So that legacy still exists today. And it's interesting because Willingboro is a predominantly black suburb, probably one of the only. I know Atlanta is starting to have some. And so, but across the country, they are incredibly rare. And it just goes to show how, government policy made the deed restriction, and then it went to the judicial system, and I think it went to the Supreme Court or New Jersey Supreme Court. I'm not sure. And when Willie James won his case, it allowed blacks to move into Willingboro, which gave at least some opportunity to move out of cities. It was one way to move into the suburbs, which is very interesting because when I was a kid, I was always like, why is Willingboro predominantly black? Because just intuitively, you would see the suburbs and they're mostly white. And you would just know that, this is where white people live. And it's interesting. And I always would wonder how that happened. And this is how that history, so they went from being banned from being allowed, and that was one. Yes. So Khalid, exactly. All the Levittowns had this deed restriction. The interesting thing about Levittown is that a black family moved in. There's actually a documentary on YouTube about it, and they ran them out of town. They threw Molotov cocktails in the window and were like harassing them so bad that they left. And Levittown today is still predominantly white. I find this history fascinating because you can draw a straight line, and let's look it up. White net worth versus black net worth. All right, so I'm going to pull up. I just want the number here. I don't need to read all this. I am looking for. Okay, in 2019, the median white household held $188,000 in wealth, 7.8 times that of the typical black household, which was $24,000. That is a direct result of housing policy because, again, the GIs from World War II bought homes with government backed loans at low down payments that they could not afford under the current market without those programs. Without the VA and FHA, they would have been in the same boat. But they got the advantage of purchasing property with basically government assistance. And these programs still exist today, FHA, VA. They are a cornerstone of home ownership and something that I highly promote because if you look at the history of housing, the people who were able to buy homes, especially in the suburbs at that time when they were super hot and super attractive and everybody wanted to live there, that means you made it if you moved out to the suburbs. They were afforded the opportunity to gain power and control and ownership of those properties. Meanwhile, minorities, blacks specifically, were denied those opportunities. And that, I believe, is the biggest reason for the wealth gap today is home ownership. And I take that very seriously as a real estate agent. And it's a passion of mine. If you guys go on the YouTube channel, if you guys just see like the tone and everything that I talk about, it's about education. It's about promoting ownership because I think it is the way to reduce that gap. And all we could do is our best to do the best that we can. And I take this very seriously. I do my little tiny micro part to make a change or make an impact on that. And obviously I'm just one person, but the actions of one person multiplied by a whole bunch of other people trying to do the same thing can have a big impact. And that means a lot to me. I don't know. So, I wish more people knew the history. And that's why I really want to do a documentary that's going to reach a mass amount of people about this issue told in a way that can reach a lot of different people. Because if people really understood the history of housing, I mean, land ownership goes back to the beginning, almost the beginning of time. At once people started farming and cities and towns started forming, the reason why you were an important person is because of the land that you owned. In medieval times, I talked about this last week, but I'm going to talk about it again because in medieval times, if you owned property, you had a surname, and a title. So that's where deed and title even comes from. Is if you owned a county, you would be a count. If you had multiple counties, you could be a duke. And that bestowed upon you a certain level of respect and power. And this is from, like 800 AD, 700 AD. And now we're in 2023. Okay. Land ownership has been the key to power and control over communities, countries. It's the cornerstone of everything. It's not everything, but it is the foundation, literally, of everything. And I just want people to understand the gravity of that. And I think you do need a historical understanding of it to really get it, because people can say, well, I'll just rent until, prices and this and that. It goes way deeper than a financial decision, land ownership or real estate ownership. It goes way beyond that. And I think you got to do, like, I hope whoever's watching, hopefully this becomes apparent. But let's continue. We're going to get back on track with the suburbs. Although you cannot divide housing segregation and the suburbs. They are literally intertwined. And I'm not the biggest like race person or whatever, but you can't separate them. It just is what it is. But let's talk about my other. I don't know. So, guys, I'm still formulating some of my opinions about how we can fix the suburbs and how we can make them better. And again, if you weren't here in the beginning, I am on the land development and zoning board in my town. So we literally make these decisions. Now it takes a lot of red tape to change something, and it costs the town money to change stuff because you need all kinds of approvals, civil planners, et cetera, to write up stuff. And to give your vision and get stuff changed is really hard. It's really easy to sit around and do nothing. That's why nothing really gets done. That's why a lot of things don't change. That's why you can't build single family houses. I mean, the only thing you can build is single family houses when we need so much more housing, but everyone's against building bigger buildings, multifamily units and stuff like that, but we desperately need them because we're seeing our housing prices go up astronomically. And I keep making the argument, can the next generation, can your kids afford to live in the community that you live? And the answer is probably hell no in most places. And I think we need to do something about that. So, with that being said, we covered this on the Artie Real Estate podcast. So, check that out. Search Artie Real Estate Podcast or Artie Real Estate and go subscribe there. We do a podcast with my real estate team, all my agents, Cassandra and Dan Curtis, Danny Deals. And it's kind of similar to this, but we cover one topic every week, and it's going pretty good. So check that out as well. A lot of people do. Yep. Yep. Okay. First, I want to say the example they're using, these guys are California people, I think, at Vox, and San Francisco market is not a good market to, it's not really a good market to use as an example, but they still get the point across, I guess. All right, guys, this is kind of not happening as much anymore. This video is a little bit older. The market's balancing out, but we are not seeing price declines. And so we still have an affordability issue because interest rates are high. That's why everything is cooled off. But there's still a massive housing shortage. Almost no one's selling their house because of the interest rates. But people need housing. They want housing. They want to own houses. But because of the affordability issue, they're priced out. Most people are priced out of buying unless you're in the upper middle class making a lot of money or coupling up. That's another problem. We're not working together as couples anymore. And that's a whole nother thing. And actually, we're going to cover that on our next podcast, on Artie Real Estate Podcast. And I can't wait to talk about that. But let's continue. And we got 6 people across the 3 platforms we're on. Talk to me nice, say hello, ask your questions. This is an interactive show. If you guys have questions, comments, I'll definitely be reading them. I can bring them up like this. So, hang out with me. It's a Sunday night. Let's have a good time. You can ask questions about anything. It doesn't have to be about complicated housing zoning. You can ask anything, mortgage financing, what my thoughts are on the market, flipping houses, investments, whatever you guys want to talk about. Correct. It's like 4 now. So that's the other thing. This is not just a buying problem. rents are way higher as well. Like I own 10 rental units and the rent just keeps going up. I keep making more and more money. Um, it's good for me individually, but I am concerned for everybody. I don't think we're fostering a good society where people are struggling to pay to live. And I think people do should get a little slice of the American dream. When you have owners, people are more invested. They're less likely to be maniacs. Like if you don't own anything and you don't have nothing to live for and you're broke and you know working and playing the game honest doesn't work, you're going to resort to crime. You're just going to be um, do antisocial behaviors. It's just not good for anybody. And I think rich people need to pay attention to this because it's cool you're making a whole bunch of money and everything is going well for you, but at some point they're going to come for your stuff because they just don't feel like the game is fair at this point. And you could tell people work hard and you can make it, but the thing is people are working hard and they ain't making it. And sure, people make bad financial decisions and I get on people for that, but like it's a bit ridiculous right now. Oh no. I have an ad. Sorry guys. Okay. Okay, so after the housing crash, they stopped building houses because they couldn't sell them. The thing about that is you can't just go from not building houses to building a ton of houses. It takes a lot. You got to hire people. Like there's a lot you got to do. So all these developers shrunk in size, and then the housing demand is blowing up. Also, we got pump faked because a lot of people thought the market was going to crash with COVID, right? So everybody took a step back, everything stopped, and we all watched. And then because everyone's stuck at home and you could work remotely, the value of your house really went higher because now your home space is more important. You're spending more time there, especially if you're working from home. Kids were remote learning, so you had more people in the house and people started to appreciate space more. So everyone said, I need more space, I need more space, I'm going to get a bigger house. And then the people are renting are sick of living in a small apartment. They want to get a house, so demand explodes. It's not profitable. So this is a big change from what we were looking at before with the suburbs, right? Because those houses, those homes that William Levitt and all these suburban developers were making were middle class homes. And at the time, they were affordable, although the buyers still needed the government, FHA and VA backing to be able to purchase them or finance them. But they were still considered affordable and obtainable. That's how so many Americans were able to purchase them. Today, as you see in this chart, they're not building starter homes. And I got to explain something to you guys. Like businesses work off of what they think they're going to make the most money on. People make the mistake that they just go, I think the country needs these type of houses, so we're going to build those. No, what they do is a whole bunch of analytics, analysis, um, research. They have whole teams that figure out, where's the cheapest place that we can buy land and sell the properties for the most amount of money. And we're going to build the properties that are the cheapest to make, but sell for the most amount that we can in that market. And we're going and we're going to get to a point that's going to show why that is. Okay. She definitely lives in California in an apartment. Zoning. All right. So if all I can build is single family homes, how do I make the most money selling single family homes? Especially in areas where the land costs more. I'm going to have to build the home that sells for a lot of money per house. Because building a whole bunch of cheap houses on margin is less good than selling $700,000 homes in most markets. Right. Because if they were allowed to, if I could build a 20 unit apartment, that might be equal to building, or it might even be superior to building a one single family house for $700,000. So everything is economics. No one is doing stuff for the good of their heart. Okay. So this goes back to what I started with. We need good policy and good systems to incentivize these companies to build what we want them to build to serve the community the way that we want to serve them. And right now we have a legacy of suburban sprawl where you can only build single family houses, and these are communities where there's sidewalks that go nowhere and there's no commercial, like the downtown is the only place where you can go buy stuff, and everyone has to commute in the same direction, and you can't build buildings over a certain height and all this kind of stuff. You leave the developers no choice but to build expensive single family houses. So that's why home prices just keep going up, because they cannot build to meet the demand. And the stuff they can build is meeting the upper end demand for them to make the most money possible. See, and my hypothesis is that even in the suburbs, we should have mixes of types of properties, right? So you shouldn't build all 4 units or all duplexes or all single family. There needs to be some sort of minimum ratios where you could build, if you build 1,000 units, say even 10% of them need to be duplexes. Another 10% needs to be 4 units. Maybe even another 10% could be like 6, 10, 15 units. So you would have a cohesive community still, but you would add units that would make it a bit more affordable, and you would just have more total people able to live in that community rather than blowing the land out. And it, again, the developer has to buy the land. And if you put 4 units on, it probably cost you like building 2 houses, but you're getting 4 units. I think that probably makes the most sense, so as not to urbanize the suburbs too much because the people are going to complain. Does that make sense? Do you guys agree? If you're in the suburbs, if you were moving into a new suburban neighborhood, would you be mad at, say 30% of the housing being multifamily properties? And when I say multifamily, they could be just as nice as your house per unit. There would just be bigger or higher, like 3, 4 story building or something. I don't think that's bad. See, that's just like bad policy. Well, not really. Like, I get it because the residents probably complain they don't want big buildings, but y- so you leave developers no choice but to build out and sprawl everything. Now you have to drive so far to get anywhere. I think it's a problem. That's what I'm trying to say. See, this is a problem, and like they're trying to accommodate, right? Because public transportation in these areas is almost non-existent. So like you're just gonna have people, like, it doesn't make sense to not have parking. But this is like a chicken and egg problem, right? Because you're gonna require all this parking, which makes sense because where the heck are they gonna park? They're gonna put their cars on the street, blah blah blah. It's a problem. At the same time, if you're going to make the footprint of a building, so that's why like the mall has a million parking spots, and a Walmart has a million parking spots, because it's based off of the square footage of the building. And all them parking spots don't get used for commercial purposes. For housing, it probably would. The solution to this is better public transportation. If you guys ever been to Europe, oh my God, it's so much better. You don't need a car, and you can get around, and it's not sketchy. The thing is, like, if you're in Philly, I don't want to take public transportation. It's not safe. You got crackheads, you got all kinds of weird stuff. You don't know you might get robbed. You don't know what's going to happen. So I get it. And it's weird because it's a cultural thing. Our idea of public transit, especially suburbanites, is negative. It attracts bad, negative people, people that shouldn't be there. There's all kinds of like negative stereotypes, or not stereotypes, but it kind of does. But how can we fix this? Because you can't build um, big buildings that have a lot of units and then have a big parking lot that deletes the purpose. At the same time, you need some sort of transportation for these people. So what do you do first? How do we fix it? I don't know. Put it in the comments. I'm curious what you guys think. Right. Ridiculous. Doesn't make sense. See, think about this way, right? Say I have a certain amount of inventory space. Okay. I'm a business. I could sell anything, and I have a certain amount of space, and I have a lot of money, and I can invest in and build or create whatever I want. but I only have a certain amount of space. How would I maximize that space? Well, if I had unlimited money, I would probably sell diamonds because they are one of the smallest things that sell for the most. Right? So, why would I sell lumber out of my warehouse when I could sell diamonds because I'm restricted on space? If I was able to do both businesses, right? Say you're capable of doing either business, I'd rather use my space for a higher price product. So, because of the zoning rules and laws, they have very limited space and they have a limited product that they can even sell. So they're going to build diamonds or very expensive houses on those individual lots because that's the maximum thing they can build to make the most money based off of the rules and the land and all the requirements. And so people get mad at the developers, but we need to look at what rules we are creating and how we are building out our suburbs. And this is why things are the way they are. And I do want to know, again, for you guys watching, what do you think a good solution would be? And if you're a suburbanite, are you cool with adding multifamily housing to your neighborhood? Right. So you need to maximize this 5,000 square feet block. So I need to sell the most profitable thing I can sell in this space. And so it's weird. Government policy and business, it's like sports. They're just following the rules of the game. If football, per se, they make a new rule about tackling, players are going to play different. Right? You know, back in the day, you used to be able to knock the shit out of people. Now you can't hit defenseless wide receivers, so you gotta tackle them different. You're gonna practice different, and then it's gonna look different, and the game's gonna look different, and that's what we need to address. That is the building requirements in my town right now. You need 1 acre. I actually have land that I haven't built on because it's 0.87 acres and we would need to ask for variances and approvals and get drawings, and it would cost a lot of money for us to even ask to build something, and it could be denied. And so when you guys say like stuff's expensive, or there's so many factors that are underlying that are creating cost. And the thing is, the cost of doing any business, there's like a hard cost, like someone has to cut the tree down, then you got to process the lumber, and then you got to ship it. So that, so that's the cost of like the wood and all that, and like the lumber. Well, there's a cost of like legal, and to me, legal costs, permits, all that kind of stuff are like soft costs that don't need to exactly exist. Some of it does, but the more laws, the more restrictions, the more expensive you're making things based off of the rules. I call them pieces of paper. So these pieces of paper are making your house cost more when it doesn't have to, because it's not economic activity that is required to build the house or to sell the house or to create the house or anything like that. It is because of the rules that are making it expensive. Without some of these rules, I think we'd see significant decreases in the cost of housing. And I think this stuff needs to be looked into heavily, because the way that we're going, and maybe nobody, maybe, the powers that be don't care because they're benefiting. But for your kids, if you can't pass them down real estate, or for you who might not own your first house, this stuff is hurting you. That's a cool way to say that. Yeah. Look, she said that in a really liberal, obnoxious way, but it's true, right? Basically, what's happening in this country, in my opinion, is that the people, basically there's like a line, right? What side of the river are you on? And the river is getting big where you're not going to be able to cross it anymore. So are you on the rich side of the river or the poor side? And to be on the rich side of the river, you need to own assets. Most people's wealth is in the real estate asset. Okay. So, and that's why we see the racial wealth divide. So especially with housing, it's getting more and it's getting more and more expensive, right? So if you're on this side, you're benefiting, you're getting richer. If you're on this side of the river's right here. If you're on this side of the river, you're getting poorer and poorer, and the divide is getting bigger, and it's getting harder to cross this river, right? The river used to be like this, and it's growing, 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 and it's getting wider and wider. And so the door is basically being closed behind people who are benefiting. Like, for example, I am a beneficiary of all this because I own 10 rental units and I own property. So because the prices are going up and rent's going up, I'm getting equity. My equity is increasing, or my wealth, and I'm getting more cash flow from the rental properties. The 21-year-old who just starting out, who none of this is their fault, are they able to buy a house right now? Are they able to get on the other side of the river? They're working hard, they're doing everything right. Are they able to get there? I think America you should be able to make it if you are smart and work hard. You can't just work hard, you got to work hard and smart. And I see, look, there's always opportunity, okay? Let's not act like it's hopeless or anything like that, but it's harder and it's getting worse, and it doesn't have to. And that's why I'm talking about this stuff. I know that, like, it's a bit convoluted. Zoning laws. Oh, how tall can a building be? Oh, how many acres can you build on? Parking spaces. This stuff affects you in a real way, and that's why we're talking about it. And also, zoning law is governed at the lowest level. Okay. So, here in New Jersey, Tuesday is election day, November 7th. Okay. 1,200 votes wins an election here. That's not that crazy. You could reach 1,200 people on a honestly, a light year. You probably make 1,000 votes in our community to win an election. And here, those are, and your local municipal council, or whatever, depending on your government structure and your town, city, blah blah blah. Those are the people that can change zoning. So I want you to be aware of it. I want you to hopefully tell other people, get people together. If you care about it, maybe you don't. I think housing affects everybody. It's definitely going to affect your kids unless you have real estate to pass down to them. their future prospects are going to be worse than yours unless you're passing down generational wealth through the increases in housing. So, something to think about. Something to think about. I told you, can't talk about housing without discrimination. Guy, that is the craziest thing. I know I saw a statistic. Schools are actually more segregated than um before segregation or during segregation. So like schools were more integrated before civil rights and all that stuff. That's crazy. And that's because, you go to school where you live and the wealth gap and housing policy and zoning policy and all kinds of stuff is affecting that. And these are things we don't talk about. We want to get mad when someone says something racist or does something or whatever. But are we looking at these systems that are causing this stuff? That's what I care about. This is the real change. Facts. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Guys, when I make enough money from these streams, then I'll get premium, I promise. But I'm not investing in that because I can listen to a 5-second ad. Guys, I'm not going to lie. When I go to my local town meetings, which I go to, or town council meetings, residents do say low key, like, I don't know if they know it's racial, but it is. And they're the only ones that show up. And I've been harping on this for a million years. You can forget, you know, national politics. Get involved in your community. Go to your township meetings. Listen, meet other people that are involved. Learn how stuff works. Look, a lot of them are online now, but if you could go in person, do that. I know you're working. I know things, but you have an hour, 2 hours, tap in, form groups, interest groups, neighborhood groups, something. At least know the people, know who's making these decisions. In our town, you can call them. You can call them, you find their info, voice your concerns, but your individual concerns aren't going to work. You need groups, okay? But I don't like how she in this video framed this because nothing stops non-whites from going to these things. And if you band together, you can have an impact. So I don't like that how she's saying that, but at the same time, when you go to this stuff, it is whiter, it is richer, but those are the people that care. So we take ownership. Shoot, even if you just rent, you just show up. Right. No one wants it. Yep. See, that's the thing. Affordable housing, everybody fights it. because they think it's going to bring down their property values. The problem is affordable housing is not done correctly. That's why the concept that I brought up earlier is so important. The way that we need to do affordable housing is to intermix it with communities. So you might have single family houses, you have duplexes, you have fourplexes, you have 6 units, you have 10 units. They're all sprinkled and mixed in, which creates a cohesive neighborhood, because the higher income or the richer people kind of police the people who aren't taking care of their properties. There's a social pressure to maintain your property. It's just like if you go into a really nice restaurant, you act differently than if you go into Fridays. It's just human nature. You kind of conform to your environment a bit. So if you intermix it, I think it works a lot better. If you throw all the low affordable income housing in one part of town, you're going to create a ghetto. You're going to create a bad part of town. You're going to create a less desirable part of town. It needs to be all mixed together. Obviously, that's tough with areas that are already developed, because where are you going to put new stuff? And if you're trying to add affordable housing, how do you spread it out? These are all problems and concerns that need to be addressed. But overall, I get why people are against clusters of affordable housing, because I do think you're going to invite an element, and like the properties can get ran down. But if you intermix them, I think it can work. But that is true. Like, people will come and protest any kind of development. Yep. That's what they'll say. Right. Mm-hmm. Yep. That's a good image right there. Yeah, because they talk about like container homes or micro homes and all that kind of stuff. The problem is it needs to be mixed. Like, if you make a whole micro home community, it's going to be like attracting like a weird element, and basically it's going to be like the cheapest area where people can go. But if you have a small house, you have a medium sized house, big house, duplex, maybe a fourplex, all mixed together, it'll make sense. I don't agree with that. I actually think if this is handled at the grassroots or the local municipal level, like I was talking about, it'd be better. When you get the federal government involved, they don't know what each community needs. They're going to make awkward, big rules and laws, which created the suburbs as we see it today, and the housing discrimination and stuff like that. We don't like big top down. Let's have like from the bottom up type of policy. And I think that's even more doable because, again, there's more, the residents can get together and kind of change the stuff, but there needs to be the will to do it and the understanding of the issue. And they just want to give money to change the zoning. It's not on the radar. See, that's a problem. This is a problem with everything right now in the country, is that the people who need to like be saying something, they kind of are, but they don't have a loud voice. And the people with all the power and money, they don't care about this issue, so nothing happens. But it's on us if we want to fix it, to do something about it. And I think this is a movable issue where like it could get done, because I don't think the developers are against a building affordable housing. It just has to make sense. You have to change the rules to allow developers to make money and to be able to build different types of things. But what do you guys think? Am I wrong? Because I'm not a big government intervention person. Nice. Nice video, guys. Thanks, Fox. You guys are the best. You guys are the best. So I started a little late, and it's late on Sunday. I hope you guys enjoyed this conversation about the suburbs, suburban history, how and why it developed. William Levitt, a revolutionary developer, was he racist or was he just following FHA policy? Also, hopefully, you discovered how government policy can really impact people's lives, where we live, the wealth gap, all that stuff has to do with housing policy in the 40s and 50s and before that, of course. But there was pivotal. That was a pivotal time in the country. Sorry, and we talked a little bit about Willingboro, New Jersey, and how it's a very rare predominantly black suburb, and how it got that way, which is a really interesting topic, which I will be covering probably in more depth at a later live stream. Also, check out the Artie Real Estate podcast where we talked about zoning as well last week, and that's on Artie Real Estate YouTube channel. If you like the video, please like and subscribe. I'm going to have clips coming out. Please share them. Please send some of these clips out. Give awareness. You know, the more the better you can make decisions. And I think this issue, while seemingly boring, is critical in impacting your life. And what else do we have? I think that's about it for today. Again, I hope you guys enjoyed. If you guys want to ask me questions, my information is everywhere. And if you have topics that you want me to cover, let's talk about it. Send them to me. With that being said, go Eagles. Beat Dallas today. And have a good one, guys. See